dance for joy or lust or anger, and every time you haven't got it right.
Welcome to Sensible Secondhand Classics, the show where we look at cars that you can buy that are over 15 years old, that you can buy between £1,000 and £5,000. This is a 1997 Fiat Coupé 20v turbo, and it is brilliant. So the Fiat Coupé was based on the same platform as the Fiat Tipo. I don't mean the one that is in production now, I mean the one from the early 1990s. And it was actually launched in late 1993, although we didn't get it in this country until 1995. The styling was done by Pininfarina, and I think it is a very, very sort of striking design, particularly this model in this beautiful blue colour. The owner of this car has actually had it from new, and it's done 39,000 miles, which is absolutely amazing. 20v turbo was probably the top of the range car. There were many other engines as well, but this is a 5-cylinder turbo engine with 220 horsepower, and certainly coming out of that roundabout you can feel we've got a lot of power underneath your right foot. Other engines available for our market were a 2-litre 4-cylinder that is based on the same kind of engine that was in the Lancia Delta HF Integrale. That generated 142 horsepower and normally aspirated guys, and then 195 horsepower in turbocharged form, and then a normally aspirated version of this engine. First of all, I think it was about 154 horsepower, later like about 157. That's actually the same engine that was in the Lancia Coupé that I did a walk around of back in December, that we never got in this country, but one of my friends, Mr. Callaghan Rubbish Mechanic, actually had one temporarily, and yes, so we got to see the engine in a bit more detail. And yes, the handbrake is a bit squeaky. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting t-shirts, mugs and stickers are now available. Please click on the Google link in the description below to purchase your very own. This car though, with its top of the range specification, this car was actually ordered directly from the factory in 1997. Has a 5-speed manual gearbox. Some of the later turbos, though, particularly the Plus edition, which was one of the last types you could actually get, had a 6-speed gearbox in it. This one feels very similar to the gearbox that's in the Alpha 145 that I drove back in 2019, and that's not surprising because the Alpha 145 it's on this platform too, and the 916 Spider that I drove on Sensible Secondhand Classics in October 2021. So we've got a lot of common engineering sort of things going on here. I don't know if it's exactly the same gearbox as those, but it does feel very similar. Certainly the clutch is nice and heavy in this car, so driving in traffic's not the easiest thing, but it is very sweet. But one thing I would say, the steering is much lighter than I imagined it would be. It's not necessarily a problem, and I can feel some some decent feel through it. It's not as heavy as I thought it would be. The ride's a little bit on the jiggly side, but it's a 220 horsepower coupe. That's just sort of the way it goes, really. Let's go to some faster roads now and just see how this performs. The the answer's really rather well. We've got the sunroof open because, amazingly, this car has no air conditioning, and it never had any. Despite being the 20 valve turbo model, it doesn't have aircon, and that was not specified by the original owner. He specified alloy wheels and a sunroof and all sorts of things, but not the aircon. And I think I had a little word with him before we headed out today, and he regrets that decision very much now. But yeah, really, really, really nice, light but positive steering, and plenty of power. Like, no question how sort of muscular it is underneath the right foot. One thing I was expecting in this car though was a bit of torque steer, and it doesn't actually seem to be too bad. Obviously we'll get onto some other roads and we'll see how it sort of feels, but actually it doesn't seem too bad. Certainly not as bad as an Alpha 164, that's for sure. What an absolute treat to be driving around in a car like this today. Glorious sunshine. Sadly, it's not the Italian sunshine that we're in, but it is lovely, nevertheless, to be out in the countryside in a Fiat Coupé. Design of this car is from Pininfarina, and all the little slashes and things like that on the car. Very, very, very much the work of the designer, who was just given a bit of a free rein. Body kit on this car, it's partly standard for this model. Things like the rear spoiler and the side skirts, I think they were either optional standard on this turbo. The front splitter though is actually different. It's amazing that the person who actually bought this new, he's still got it. Just, you know, an incredibly honest, straight original car. Never had any paint, never had any welding or anything like that. Kept in the garage for a long time. There are bits of the paint that are sort of flaking off a bit now, but this car is 25 years old, and you know, you do sort of expect that. It's just a joy to have something like this around. Got a rear wiper, but actually it's not a hatchback coupe, it's actually a saloon coupe. So if we just do that to open that up, there we go. So yeah, rear wiper on a saloon. I know some of you will enjoy that sort of thing. Very delicate little lights. I think they were used on various other sort of vehicles as well. So if we just move that out of the way, pull this up. So you've got a space saver wheel just in there. I think that's the original one actually for the car. It's a pretty good size of boot for something like this. There is a little ski hatch sort of there. It's not full folding rear seats or anything, but compared with a lot of other cars of this sort of type, it's really not that bad. And there we go, it's actually a Zender kit on this. Right, I'll have to just adjust something here because the boot needs to be just turned that way to make it shut properly. I think this colour quite suits the car. You do see you know, sort of ones in bright red and black and things like that, but I think this colour I think is really nice. Just wait for this tractor to go past. We are out in the middle of the countryside today. So we've got Brembo brakes on this car as well, which is great. Headlamps all do that. They all go a bit cloudy after a while. Just the way that it goes, really. But yeah, a striking design, particularly with this special, I think it's a limited edition front splitter on this car. It does look sort of Ferrari-esque, and the owner's actually put a little Ferrari badge on here. We open up with the door handle, you're definitely reminded that it's a 20 valve turbo. There's no mistaking that. Little Ferrari badge there. There is a boot release there, but I just happen to use the key. Blue key, by the way. Whenever you're buying one of these cars, make sure you've got the blue and the brown key. If you don't have that brown key, you can't make any more copies as far as I understand it. Very, very lovely dashboard in this, colour coded to the car, with a Pininfarina design. I think that Italia badge is different though, and just something a bit unusual. I mean, the only issue I would have with this is the fact that this is just not worn very well over the years. It is all sticky and nasty, and you know, that's really not what you want. So the Fiat Stilo that I drove a couple of years ago, I know it's a bit of a later Fiat, but sorry about the noise about the lorry. It's a bit later, but it's again had this problem with it sticky and horrible. It's like the Apple Newton, I think, is the thing from this era which I'd compare that to. Let's see if my secret mesh documents go in the glove box. Oh no, viewers. Hopeless. Terrible. Oh well. At least these controls are very easy to use. Everything's quite straightforward actually, but should have specified air conditioning from the factory, but he did not, unfortunately. Biscuit coloured interior. It's not a beige leather interior, it is a biscuit coloured interior, and even the bits of like exposed metal in here, they in other cars might look like it's cheap, but in here it just looks charming because it continues all the way across the dashboard, all the way to the other side. Got the roof open a little bit for a little bit of ventilation. The sunroof was an option. Very interesting sort of grab handles on here as well. These stalks, I don't know if they're off another Fiat or something, or if they're individual to the Coupe, but they feel pretty good. Nice little steering wheel. It looks a bit like one that you used to use in the Mark 1 Punto, but I could be wrong about that. Pedals, driver's side one of the accelerator is actually, I think, an aluminium one. This is the standard stereo that came with the car, little Callaghan unit. It's got a little Fiat badge there. I don't know if I can actually open the ashtray. It's all going a bit sticky. We'll leave that then. Ugh. Right, electric mirrors just here. That switch looks very familiar, kind of, you know, 90s Fiat stroke Alfa Romeo, doesn't it? The switches are in the middle. That's quite common on a car of this era. I don't know what this one is. Maybe that's something to do with a one-touch operation or something. Standard handbrake, very good. Somewhere to put a cup if you wanted it to, but it's not going to hold it too securely. And we've got little individual lights up here. So, yes, that works. Excellent. Spot lamp. Very, very tiny little sun visors, which are reminiscent of something like, I don't know, an Alpha Spider or something like that, I think. Right, I think you wanted me to get in the back, and so I shall, just for the viewers. Right, viewers, unlike on a Peugeot 406 Coupe, you don't have an automated seat, it is a manual one. Let's see what we can do in terms of getting in. Right, okay, I'm in. No Roger Moore noises from View to a Kill today. Oh dear. Uh-oh. We've got a problem, viewers. My head is touching the rear screen, and yeah, I can't get this seat back. If this passenger moved forward a bit, I'm sure I'd get it in, but that's a sort of typical place where a passenger would sit. So maybe not for the people longest of leg. I mean, that's my driving position there, and there's really no legroom whatsoever. It is just a two-seater in the back, as you probably expect. But yeah, it feels reasonably airy in here. And the headlining's nice. It's just, oh, I'm gonna have to release myself from my self-imposed prison, aren't I? Right, I shall do that, and when I'm gonna go to some footage I recorded earlier, and we had a look at the engine. So we're recording the engine in a different place because there is a little issue with getting the bonnet open and closed on this car. So we're just doing this in a different location with the owner here. So this is the 5-cylinder 20-valve turbo engine, which generates 220 horsepower in this application. It's also the same engine that was in the Lancia Kappa that I did a walk around of back in December last year, although that was the non-turbo version of this. It's actually got a cam belt in it, so you do need to make sure you change that. You can see it's got 5 different leads there, so it is a 5-cylinder engine. It's a little bit cramped under here. There's all sorts of different interesting things you have to you know, take care of here, with the sort of light things being where they are. And it's a bit unusual the way the setup is. You know, the coolant reservoir is right next there to the windscreen washer fluid reservoir, and a couple of other interesting things the way that it's designed. But it's to keep the bonnet line as low as possible, I think. But yeah, it's just funny that this is just a Fiat Tipo underneath here. So now we're in a residential zone. We've got some speed bumps. We'll just see what the ride's actually like. It felt a bit fidgety as we were going on a bit earlier, but we'll see what it's like over these speed bumps. I'm not expecting it to be amazing. That's not too bad, actually. I'm very pleased I've got my new mount now, and that actually provides much better stability for all of you watching. Although the experience is much the same. Yeah, the gearing's quite high in this. It's not a low geared car. Brakes are very, very good. They feel very reassuring in this. They're actually Brembo brakes in this, and they are standard how they came. One thing that the owner said to me was that he finds the turning circle of this car quite big, and I do understand why he says that, and it's because the car's got a really quick steering rack. It's, I think, 2.2 turns lock to lock, and not all the coupes had this steering rack in. Some of them were, I think, 2.5, 2.6. That's probably why it might have the sort of problems with the turning circle. Certainly, it's not difficult to drive. The clutch is the main thing that's a bit of a challenge, but that's the same with lots of Italian high-performance cars of this time. The Fiat Coupé didn't normally have trim levels as such. It's sort of badged as Coupé 2 litre 16 valve, Coupé 20 valve turbo, and this is the same. There are some extras on this car, like the sunroof. But the only two trim designations that we used, apart from just the standard Coupé one, and that was the LE and then the Plus model. Plus model was like a run-out model right at the end. The LE was a car that was a bit confusing because the dealers didn't know whether there were about 300 made or like 1,200 made. I think 300 were in this country and then about 1,200 in total. It's something like that. Obviously, if you know more about that, then please put it in the comment section below. It's funny that, you know, a car like this just doesn't really exist anymore. I think what happened when this car was discontinued in 2000 was that they decided not to replace it because it was treading on the toes of the Alfa Romeo Spider and GTV 916, and those cars were sort of eventually replaced after 2004, but this was not replaced after 2000. And with Fiat and Alfa Romeo being sort of in-house and these cars sharing many of the same parts, I think possibly they didn't think they needed anything. Nevertheless, I'm glad they made this car. The only thing I would say, just again, is critical, the steering is just a tad on the light side. It's nothing in comparison with, you know, these are modern systems that need electrical assistance or anything like that, but it just would be nicer to have a little bit more steering feel. So viewers, this amazing Fiat Coupé that does 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds. Is this something that you should consider with your hard-earned budget of between £1,000 and £5,000 as a sensible second-hand classic? Well, I'm not sure this is a particularly sensible car. I mean, it's not the most practical. These door mirrors are really tiny and the clutch is very heavy. And also these do rust. I mean, really rust. Amazingly, this car was kept in a garage for I think about 10 years by the original owner, and there's no rust on this one at all, which is exactly what the sort of thing you want to see. The 5-cylinder engine is a cam belt engine, and so you want to make sure that that's been done regularly. People have skipped that kind of thing, and it is quite an expensive job on this car. So it really depends. It's a bit like the sort of Alfa 916 Spider in that respect. It's not maybe the most sensible classic, but they are getting thin on the ground now. They are quite nice to drive, apart from maybe the steering is a little bit too light for my personal preference, but you do feel like you're in a powerful, significant car, and the styling is just amazingly distinctive. So whether or not this is your sort of thing, for many of you I suspect it will be. Anyway, thank you for watching this episode of Sensible Secondhand Classics. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave a comment below, and also join the channel if you'd like to. There's a button just below the video there for you to do just that. Thank you very much indeed once again.